With the biting scarcity of premium motor spirit, also known as petrol, which has hit the Federal Capital Territory, this over a month has become acute over the weekend, with spread nationwide, with few queues on a scale not seen in recent times. The product is selling for as much as 1,000 naira per litre in some places. The scarcity led to disruption of commercial and social activities at the weekend in Abuja and also Lagos, as well as Kaduna, Kano, Port Harcourt, Niger, Nasarawa, and several other states. Well, on the side of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, the scarcity is a fallout of distribution challenges that have since been addressed. In a statement signed by Mr. Olufemi Shoneye, the Chief Corporate Communications Officer at the NNPCL, he warned Nigerians against panic buying, saying efforts are underway to address all of the challenges on ground, adding that loading of products has commenced immediately. Today, we'll focus on petroleum pricing and, of course, operation of local refineries in the country. That has been a burning issue, and my guest is Mr. Majeed Dahiru. He's a distinguished newspaper columnist, national policy analyst with a deep understanding of political and social economic issues in Nigeria. Years of experience as a commentator and analyst, Mr. Dahiru offers insightful perspective on national and international affairs, contributing to informed public discourse. Thank you for your time. It's good to have you start the week on Business Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, I think there's been a lot of back and forth here, and I would like you to clarify some issues, particularly with around crude supply and lack of support for the Dangote refinery, as alleged in some quarters.
I think contrary to the entrenched narrative out there concerning the fact that the Dangote refinery is not receiving adequate support from the federal government and by extension the NNPC, which is a state-owned enterprise, as well as the regulatory bodies such as the NUPRC for the upstream and the NMDPRA for the mid and downstream. I think more than any other entity, the Dangote refinery effort has received humongous support and is still receiving same as we speak. Some of the issues that have been highlighted has to do with, say, crude oil supply. Now, whereas no refinery in the world sources its entire crude requirement locally, well, I can assure you that from the information available to some of us, the NNPC has supplied Dangote refineries from its own stock, from what is available to it. Do not forget that Nigeria is also having problems of crude oil production arising from oil theft and underinvestment. But from what's available to NNPC, they have not only supplied Dangote substantial quantity of crude, they have also done so at a discounted rate. In fact, I can assure you that of the over 30 vessels that have been supplied to, over 30 cargoes that have been supplied to Dangote, he got a discount of $1 per barrel, which actually is going to cost us Nigerians, because we all own NNPC about $600 million. And in some instances, he even extended credit facilities to him over crude supply. So as we speak, Dangote did not only get supply of crude, he got it at the discounted rate from NNPC, and in some instances, they extended a credit line to him on the supply of crude. So if it is supply of crude from NNPC, he has gotten all the support that NNPC can offer at this time. With the limited stock it has to. And for the regulatory bodies, for example, the NUPRC is doing all it can to guarantee crude supply from the IOCs. However, whereas you have a domestic obligation to supply crude to local refineries by IOCs and other operators, including the NNPC, but this must be done on a willing buyer, willing seller basis. And so the NUPRC cannot dictate the price of crude to IOCs in the same way that the NNDPRA cannot dictate the price of products to Dangote refineries in the Nigerian markets or even elsewhere. So it's a willing buyer, willing seller situation, and I think Dangote will just have to negotiate with the IOCs to actually obtain the kind of crude he wants in Nigeria. But one thing is sure, to operate a refinery anywhere in the world, you would have to, leverage on importation of crude, as well as if you are fortunate to have your facility in an oil-producing country, also obtain from the local market. There are no, strict rules about that. It's an open market, and as a matter of business sense, you must actually import crude. I'll tell you why. What NNPC offers to Dangote is Bonilite blend of crude. It's one of the most, it's one of the best crude in the world, best grade crude in the world. It's called sweet crude. And for a refinery business, you cannot actually use entirely Bonilite to blend products out of your facilities. You might run at a loss, because if you know the business of refineries all over the world, it has a very low profit margin. It is as thin, the profit margin is as thin as a hair strand. And that is because there's a global effort to keep prices of energy low as much as possible. And so what usually happens is most refineries will leverage on importing lower grades of crude, like the WTI and the Brent, so as to blend it with Bonilite to, bring out products. So as a matter of business sense, and even how his own facility is configured, Dangote will also have to import crude from elsewhere to augment what it has in Nigeria. And this is not peculiar to Nigeria. The United States of America, for example, is a country that is endowed with, rich deposits of hydrocarbons, about 45 billion proven reserves of crude oil. However, it also imports crude oil to power its refineries. You're talking about a country with capacity to produce over 10 million barrels per day, but yet they actually augment what they have at home with importation. Similarly, the United States, for example, is having 132 functional refineries as we speak, 132. But they still import refined products. So you see, it's an open market. What is important is not to over-rely on other importation or exportation. There should be a fair balance. So there's nothing exactly wrong with Dangote importing crude to augment what he has in Nigeria. So there's nothing exactly wrong with that. It is a common practice globally. Again, let me tell you this, that Saudi Arabia, with the capacity to pump 12 million barrels of crude per day, imports crude oil from other countries too. In fact, in 2022, Saudi Arabia imported crude oil from Nigeria amounting to about $650 million. And so there's nothing wrong with the importation of crude. To keep supply chains open, there will always be importation of crude and refined products into any country in the world. So there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that the promoters of the Dangote refinery should simply sit down, settle down, and concentrate first and foremost in completing their refinery, which is still at 50% completion stage as we speak, before some of these issues that they are throwing up. And I think that at this point they need to cooperate more with their partners, the NNPC, the IOCs, and the regulators, to make sure that their facility is fully up and running and fully operational before we begin to have other conversations around their refinery.
It's a very important subject of discourse, considering what is expected from this refinery, impact on the economy, of course, at the end of the day. But the international crude pricing regime, as well as cost of refining finances and its effect on this pump price, is also something that we should look at. What is the expected outcome? Because Nigerians are more interested in what will happen to the pump price if we consider all of these issues at the end of the day.
Without a subsidy regime in place, Dangote refinery or any other local refinery will not bring succor in terms of pricing of products to the Nigerian market or consumers. Because one, you have to consider the fact that this is a commercial enterprise. And so he has also mobilized financing from wherever he could get it to invest in this business. So it is profit driven. And so he's going to factor in his profit margin and the cost of financing as well, in order to recover his cost of investment into the pricing mechanism. And secondly, too, crude oil prices are actually fixed at international rates. And so whereas NNPC can give to him at a discount, as they have already done, but he will not be able to get all of his stock from the NNPC alone, which is a Nigerian enterprise that is like the backbone of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. So for other players like the IOCs or other countries going to import from, they're going to sell to him at a commercial rate. That is going to reflect in the domestic price of refined products. As you know, the Dangote refinery, having completed its priority 1 and priority 2 segment of its refinery, is able to produce AGO and jet kero. But you will agree with me that imported products in Nigeria are still competing in terms of price with what is being refined locally. So that simply tells you that we may not have much difference in pricing, given the fact that we have local refineries not up and running. So a subsidy by way of either tax breaks or probably selling crude to him at a discounted rate, sufficient crude, and that will be subject to more investment by the federal government and NNPC to be able to produce more, safeguard our oil pipelines and other exploration facilities so as to prevent oil theft and maximize, output. Otherwise, without these measures in place, without government imposing subsidy on products on Dangote refinery, the price might not be much different from what you have in the open market today. According to some analysts who've done their mathematics, they will tell you that the landing cost of petrol today is above 1,200 naira per liter. And a lot of people that have, deep knowledge of this issue will also tell you that Dangote refinery cannot dispense petrol at the pump at less than 1,200 naira. And at 1,200, that is way beyond the affordability threshold of Nigerians. And you can see that even the model of subsidy by the current administration has led to a lot of social dislocations, creating unrest, protest, and what have you, which has necessitated the government now, from some exclusive reports we are saying, taking concrete steps to probably restore subsidy in one way or the other. And so, except for subsidy, a free market pricing regime from Dangote refinery or any other local refinery will not impact much on local pricing in terms of affordability. So I do not think that the answer to affordable petrol in Nigeria or diesel lies in Dangote refinery or any other commercially oriented refinery.
Sourcing crude, if you look at what you've said earlier, it means that sourcing crude could be from within and outside the country. I'd like to ask why that should be, because if we can address all theft and we increase production, will there be a positive along that line? And why do you really insist that they must get from both inside and outside the country? That's talking about crude imports.
No, that is the global practice. Like I told you, America is one of the largest oil producers in the world. Saudi Arabia is the leading oil producer in the world. Saudi still imports crude oil. Saudi has 5 functional refineries at home, and Saudi still imports refined products to augment. You see, when it comes to energy security, 3 things are involved: availability, accessibility, and affordability. Availability means supply must at all times exceed demand. And so to keep supply in excess, which is better for energy security because these products do not expire, they can be stored. You must keep open the supply chains from both within and outside the country to prevent shocks, to prevent shutdowns, to prevent disruptions that could impact in the market. Because once you have a marginal increase in the price of energy anywhere in the world, it triggers inflation, it distorts the economy, and it creates the kind of economic problems you've seen, for example, in Nigeria of recent. So it's important. For example, when Nigeria's refinery used to work, the Kaduna refinery is designed to process heavy crude, which is usually explored, extracted from excavers. But whenever production is down in excavers, Nigeria, even when our refineries were working, used to import heavy crude from Venezuela that's endowed with heavy crude, just to augment what is available to power the Kaduna refinery. So there's nothing wrong with importation. It's like when you have industries anywhere in the world, you must import raw materials one way or the other. For example, the iron and steel complex in Ajakuta is supposed to be powered by coking coal to be imported from Australia. Therefore, having iron ore deposits in Itakwe, which is very close to Ajakuta. So that is the dynamics of industrialization. You cannot be an island. You must leverage import and export of raw materials and finished products to simply enhance your own production. And so Nigeria cannot be an exception. So what I'm saying is, it's an open market, it's a free market. The same way Dangote does not have an obligation to offload all of its refined products into the Nigerian market. IOCs and other operators in the upstream sector also have commitments to their clients and customers overseas and in different jurisdictions. They have contractual obligations too. And so you may have to augment from time to time. What is important, it is a free market. Once it's a free market, it means as you're making your investment, your risk is covered because it is a free market. There is no advantage conferred on any player at all in the industry, in the sector. And so I don't know why, anybody will fret over the fact that you have to source crude from overseas. Even the most endowed countries with capacity to produce as much as 10 and 12 million barrels of crude per day still import crude from all over the world. So there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Because finally here, like you've also mentioned, our ultimate objective and goal is energy security, which is what government and, of course, the NPCL is after. So finally, do you think that importation mix, local and foreign, is what we can do to achieve energy security, which is key at this time? Let's wrap up on that note.
Because of the need to keep supply chains open, you cannot rely on even yourself alone for energy security, because something can happen within your own territory that will tank investments in exploration of crude, that will make operators to divest. Anything can just happen. So you must keep that supply chain open so that you get from within and outside of your own jurisdiction in order to keep the supply chain of the base material for energy production open. It's very important. And again, this is not about the failure of the NNPC or the failure of the Nigerian system. Importation of crude all over the world is done by most of the major players, from China to the United States of America to Saudi Arabia. Importation of crude into even oil-producing countries is a necessary requirement to keep supply chains open, to augment what you have at home. So there's nothing wrong with it. I do not think ordinarily this should have created the level of brouhaha it has created.
Well, it's a good way to leave it on this conversation. Mr. Majeed Dahiru is a distinguished newspaper columnist and national policy analyst. Thank you for your view on this topic of discourse, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.